Hello and welcome to Bookish Brits. I'm Rex, and this month, instead of review, I wanted to talk about one of my favourite children's writers and illustrators, Jan Pienkowski. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, and that's what prompted me to want to talk about him. And I couldn't pick one book. Should I talk about Meg and Mog and how fantastic they were and brilliant, and how much I absolutely loved them as a child and can't wait for my nephew to read them as well? Or should I talk about his amazing pop-ups like Haunted Mansion and what brilliant books he did? Or should I talk about something else? And the thing that came back to me when this happened is it reminded me that the very first book I ever bought with my own money was illustrated by Jan Pienkowski. And I bought it because of his illustrations. I was 7 years old, and we would have this amazing thing at school where the hall would be opened up to the children, and there'd be all these like crates, not crates, but like these opening bookcase crate cabinet things that would open up, and they would have lots of lovely books, all for different age ranges and all for different genres and types of fiction and non-fiction, and these like posters and all sorts. And they would come to our school, I think once a month, and you could go through and have a quick look and then decide if you wanted to buy something. But being children, we didn't really have money. So if you wanted to buy a book, what would happen was you would take it up to the lady who ran this, I assume, business of going around school selling books. And you would put your name down and the book that you wanted, and she would give you an instalment plan. This might sound a little mad, but genuinely an instalment plan. And she'd put the price of the book, and each month you would come back with your next instalment and pay her. And my down payment was a whole 10 pence for this book, and the book was £2.50. So I put my 10 pence down, and each month I would come back and I would ask my mum for any loose change that she had. And at the time we weren't doing so great, so it wasn't, it might sound ridiculous now that my mum didn't have 10, 20 pence just lying around spare, or couldn't just give me the £2.50. But she would diligently put aside the 10 pence for me to give to the lady. And then I kind of worked out that 10 pence a month meant I wouldn't get this book anytime soon. So I kind of poked my dad, and he would give me an extra 10 pence. So I went back next month with my 20 pence, and then another month with 15 pence. And then, in a big windfall, one time my dad gave me like 80p. Made a big chunk there. But eventually, by the end of the school year, I had paid off my book. And that book was The Necklace of Raindrops, which is written by Joan Aitken, but illustrated by Jan Pienkowski. And I'm just going to say, look at that beautiful cover. And this is really emblematic of one of his styles, of this silhouette art, of these beautiful, vibrant, gorgeous colours. And then the people or elements like buildings and things being silhouetted. And I'd never seen anything like it before, and I rarely see anything similar. And without thinking of him and assuming that, I don't know if he started it, I never looked into it, but all of the illustrations are these gorgeous, gorgeous colours and images that just capture the imagination. And I read this book over and over like I had it memorised. Because it was the only book that was mine. It wasn't a hand-me-down, it wasn't a library book, it was mine. I had bought it, admittedly with my parents' money, but it was my book. And it was a long time before I could buy another book that was mine, but it was so special to me. And I unfortunately lost it in my 20s when I was moving house once, and I was heartbroken when that happened. But a bookseller friend of mine had told me about Abe Books, which was not a very well-known thing back then. And I found this copy, which I cherish, and I've now had for about 20 years. So, which was the same as my copy. Unfortunately, the dust jacket's a bit torn and it is scribbled in. But I kind of like that, it belonged to a girl called Anne, and she bought it in 1977. And I probably bought mine in 1989, I think. But I kind of like that this was someone else's memory, even though I've lost mine. And these illustrations, they made me then judge other books that weren't as beautifully illustrated or beautifully written. And then because of that, I then found out, I was very excited when I realised that he had written Meg and Mog, because I'd read those growing up. So I was like, oh, it's him again. And then every time I encountered something by him, it just made me really excited. And that meant when I met one of my friends, Maria, and I had we were talking about illustrators that we liked, and his name came up, and she went, oh, let me show you something. And she had The Christmas Story, which, if you've never seen it, is a fully silhouette Christmas decoration. That's a book. So the book opens up, and then you tie it with a ribbon, and it becomes this beautiful like octagonal or hexagonal story that's illustrated with these white cutouts that are almost like pop-up-esque. So it's a decoration, it's a story, it's a book, it's phenomenal. I've never seen anything quite like it. And she was like, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of his. And that just one of those little weird connections that you have with people. And I know he's a prolific illustrator, but I don't know how often you go around saying, guess who my favourite illustrator is? And I had the similar thing with my friend Laura. And then when I met my husband, and he was like, oh, when we were moving in together, and he was like, oh, well, let me put my books away. And he still had some of his childhood books, and one was The Haunted Mansion. And we again had this lovely conversation, and we have since, about how much we love Jan Pienkowski's work. And I just wanted to tell you that story. And if you've never seen or read any of his books, please, it's never too late. I don't care how old you are. It's never too late to pick up or just have a look at his amazing work and illustrations and the books he's written, because they are wonderful and beautiful and brilliant. And if you have children, you've got all the back catalogue to go and choose from and find a gem for them to grow up with and love and adore. So he holds a very special place in my heart, as does Joan Aitken. So I hope you don't mind me telling you that little story today, and it not being a review, but rather than a love letter to his whole body of work. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next month when I go back to a real book review. Take care.